My name is Natalie Rivers. I'm 29 years old, and the night my parents called me a disgrace was the first night I didn't flinch. I just sat at the dinner table with my hands folded in my lap, listening while they demanded I pay off their mortgage or get out of their house by morning. My brother leaned back in his chair, grinning like he had waited his whole life for this performance, and called me a failure, a burden, a woman who would never be anything without family pity. Then my mother looked straight at me and said, "You were a waste of space from the day you started making your own choices." That sentence should have broken me. Years ago, it would have. But that night, I smiled. Not because I was forgiving them, not because I was weak. I smiled because inside my bag was a plain white envelope, and inside that envelope was the reason every insult they threw at me was about to turn into panic. They thought they controlled the house, the money, the story, and me. They thought I had come home to beg. They had no idea I had spent the last 6 months quietly studying every signature, every loan document, every hidden transfer, every lie they thought I was too stupid to understand. So when my father slammed his fist on the table and said, "Pay what you owe this family," I reached into my bag, and for the first time in my life, everyone stopped talking. Before I tell you what was inside that envelope, and what happened after I placed it in front of them, tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The truth is, I never planned on becoming the kind of woman who checks property records for a living. When I was younger, I wanted to design stage sets for theaters, build tiny worlds out of wood, paint, light, and imagination. But dreams cost money, and in my family, money was never given without a chain attached to it. So I became practical. I took night classes, learned title research, worked for a county records office, then opened a small company that helped buyers, lenders, and attorneys verify property ownership before deals went wrong. It was not glamorous. Nobody clapped when I found an old lien or caught a misspelled legal description. But I was good at it. Quietly good. The kind of good people only noticed when I saved them from losing 6 figures. My parents never saw that. To them, I was still the daughter who didn't marry young, didn't give them bragging rights at church, didn't agree to move back home and become their unpaid helper. My father, Thomas Rivers, built his entire identity around control. He spoke like every room was a courtroom and he was the judge. My mother, Sarah Rivers, made cruelty sound like concern. She could cut me open with a soft voice and then ask why I was bleeding. My brother, Lucas Rivers, was the golden son, the charming disaster, the man who could wreck a car, lose a job, drain a savings account, and still be called under pressure. I was the one who had to be responsible. I was the one who had to be grateful. I was the one who got reminded that the roof over my head was not free, even though I had paid rent to them for years after moving back temporarily to help when my mother claimed she was sick. At first, I believed her. I canceled clients, moved my files into the guest room, cooked meals, handled errands, and gave them money whenever they said the mortgage was a little tight this month. Then, the little tight months became every month. Then Lucas moved back in and somehow became too stressed to contribute. Then my parents started saying things like, "Since you're here anyway, you should help more." More meant groceries. More meant utilities. More meant repairs. More meant paying the insurance bill because Dad said his check was delayed. I asked questions only once. My father stared at me over his coffee and said, "Don't act like a stranger in this family." So I stopped asking out loud. But I didn't stop looking. That is what they never understood about me. I was quiet, not blind. I started with a late notice I found under the toaster, folded so tightly it looked like someone had tried to make it disappear. The letter said the mortgage was 90 days behind. Not 30. not a temporary mistake. 90. My stomach dropped, not because they were in trouble, but because I had been giving them money the entire time. I had paid them nearly $18,000 over 7 months, and none of it had touched the mortgage. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, but then I saw Lucas wearing a new watch. I saw my mother posting pictures from a weekend spa resort. I saw my father bragging about helping Lucas get back on his feet after another failed investment. And then one night, while uploading county filings for a client, I searched our address out of habit. My hands went cold. There was a home equity line of credit I had never seen before. Attached to it was a notarized statement listing me as a financial contributor and consenting household member. My name was there, Natalie Rivers. My signature was there too, except I had never signed it. I stared at the screen for a full minute, unable to breathe. Then I downloaded every document, every page, every stamp, every date. The signature was close enough to fool someone careless, but not close enough to fool me. They had not just insulted me, they had used me. They had turned my responsibility into a weapon, my name into collateral, and my silence into permission. That was the night something inside me stopped begging for love and started building a case. For 6 months, I lived in that house like a ghost with a checklist. I smiled at breakfast while scanning my father's mail with my eyes. I listened to my mother complain about sacrifices while saving screenshots of the money I had transferred. I watched Lucas call me pathetic while adding his public posts to a folder labeled Personal Spending Timeline. I knew how it sounded. Cold, calculated, maybe even cruel. But when people spend years telling you that your pain is drama, you learn to collect proof before you speak. I contacted an attorney I trusted from work. Not as a daughter, not as a victim, but as a client. Her name was Ellen Brooks, and she was the first person who looked at my documents and did not tell me to calm down. She went through the forged consent form, the home equity line, the mortgage default notice, the bank letters, and my transfer records. When she finished, she took off her glasses and said, "Natalie, this is not family conflict. This is financial abuse and possibly fraud." Hearing that out loud did something strange to me. It hurt, but it also steadied me. For years, my parents had made everything sound like my emotional failure. If I objected, I was selfish. If I cried, I was unstable. If I asked for respect, I was ungrateful. But fraud was not a feeling. It was paper. It was dates. It was signatures. It was evidence. Ellen helped me file an identity theft report, notify the lender, and freeze anything connected to my name. She also found something my parents had hidden under layers of panic and pride. The mortgage had already entered pre-foreclosure, and the lender was preparing to sell the note to recover losses. My parents thought they could scare me into dumping my savings into the hole before anyone discovered what they had done. They thought if they shouted loud enough, I would panic, pay, and disappear back into the role they had written for me. But they were too late. Through my company and with legal guidance, I didn't buy their house behind their backs in some dramatic movie-style trick. I did something cleaner. I purchased a valid assignment of the defaulted debt through a third-party investment group after the lender bundled the note for sale. It took paperwork, approvals, and more money than I wanted to risk. I sold my car. I liquidated an investment account I had built penny by penny. I took a business loan with my own company as collateral. Everyone around me called it bold. Ellen called it dangerous but legal. I called it the first time I had ever bet on myself instead of paying for someone else's mistake. When the assignment was finalized, the house my father used as a throne became a file in my office. The mortgage he thought gave him power was now controlled by an entity I owned. More importantly, the fraud report connected to my forged signature meant I could demand removal of my name from every false document, pursue damages, and prevent them from using me again. I did not want to ruin them for fun. I wanted them to face the truth with no escape route through my bank account. That final week, my parents grew more aggressive. My father started leaving notes on the kitchen counter. Family meeting Friday, attendance required. My mother cornered me in the hallway and said, "You need to stop acting superior and help us before your father loses patience." Lucas laughed and said, "You're almost 30 and still living here. Maybe be useful for once." Every insult confirmed I was doing the right thing. On Friday afternoon, I packed my important things into my car: laptop, passport, certificates, client files, 2 boxes of clothes, and a framed photo of my grandmother that nobody else seemed to value. Then I returned to the dining room for their meeting. My father had chosen the setting carefully. The same table where I had been scolded as a teenager for wanting art school. The same table where my brother's failures became family emergencies and my achievements became luck. The same table where my mother once told me, "You would be prettier if you stopped looking so defensive." I placed my bag beside my chair. The envelope was inside. My heartbeat was steady. That scared me more than anger would have. Anger shakes. Peace moves with precision. Dinner started with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the kind of silence people use when they want you nervous. My father carved the meat like he was performing authority. My mother passed plates with trembling politeness. Lucas arrived late, dropped into his chair and said, "So, are we finally telling Natalie she has to grow up?" I looked at him and smiled. He smirked back, thinking the smile was embarrassment. That was his first mistake. My father cleared his throat and said, "This family is facing a serious financial situation, and everyone needs to contribute according to what they owe." I asked, "What exactly do I owe?" He set down the carving knife slowly. "Don't play games. You've lived under this roof. You've eaten our food. You've used our resources. Your mother and I carried you when you had nothing." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the lie was so large it needed oxygen. "I paid rent," I said. "I paid utilities. I bought groceries. I covered repairs. I gave you money every month because you said the mortgage was being handled." My mother pressed a napkin to her lips. "This is not the time for accounting." "That's interesting," I said, "because accounting is exactly what this is." Lucas leaned forward, his face bright with cruelty. "You always do this. You make everything about numbers because you don't have anything else. No husband, no real career anyone cares about, no family of your own. Just files and bitterness." My father did not stop him. My mother did not stop him. So Lucas kept going. "You're a failure, Natalie, a disgrace. And honestly, if Mom and Dad had any sense, they'd kick you out tonight unless you pay off the mortgage." There it was, the line from the hook, spoken with a full mouth and an empty soul. My father nodded as if Lucas had said something wise. "He's right. You either help us settle this debt, or you leave this house." I looked at my mother. Some childish part of me still wanted her to say enough, to remember I was her daughter before I was her convenience. Instead, she looked exhausted and annoyed, like my pain was just another bill on the table. "You were a waste of space when you started chasing your own life," she said. "Maybe this is your chance to finally repay us." The room went very still. I felt something old and wounded rise in my chest, but I did not let it speak first. I reached down, opened my bag, and pulled out the envelope. Lucas snorted. "What is that? Your resignation letter from being a disappointment?" I slid it across the table to my father. "Open it." He stared at the envelope, then at me. "I'm not interested in your drama." "You will be," I said. My voice was calm enough to make my mother shift in her chair. My father tore it open with the irritated confidence of a man who had never imagined consequences could arrive in stationery. The first page was the assignment summary. The second was the fraud notice. The third was a certified copy of my identity theft report. The fourth was the formal demand letter prepared by Ellen. He read the first line. His face changed. Not slowly. Instantly. Color drained from his cheeks as if someone had opened a valve. "What is this?" he said. I folded my hands. "It's the part where you stop telling me I owe you." My mother grabbed the papers from him. Her eyes moved frantically. "Thomas," she whispered, "what does this mean?" Lucas reached for a page and froze when he saw my company's name printed under the servicing contact. "No," he said. Then louder, "No, no, no." I looked at all three of them and said, "The mortgage you demanded I pay is no longer in your control. The forged document with my signature has been reported. The lender has been notified. My attorney has copies of everything. And as of yesterday, the debt you tried to bury under my name is being handled through my company's legal counsel." My father stood so fast his chair slammed into the wall. "You bought our mortgage?" "I bought the truth," I said. "The mortgage was just attached to it." My father started screaming so loudly the neighbor's dog barked. Not words at first, just sound. The kind of rage a controlling man makes when the remote to his world stops working. My mother collapsed into her chair, one hand on her chest, breathing so fast I thought she might faint. Lucas threw his plate against the sideboard, mashed potatoes sliding down the cabinet like a ridiculous white flag. "No, no, no," he shouted. "You can't do this. You can't just steal the house." "I didn't steal anything," I said. "That is the difference between us." My father jabbed a finger toward my face. "You ungrateful little—" "Choose your next word carefully," I interrupted. "There is already enough in that envelope." For once, he stopped. That tiny pause was more satisfying than any insult I could have thrown back. My mother's voice cracked. "Natalie, sweetheart, this has gone too far. We are family. We can fix this privately." "Privately?" I repeated. "You used my name privately. You forged my signature privately. You took my money privately. You planned to force me to pay a debt privately. Now that proof exists. Suddenly you want privacy?" She began to cry, but I knew her tears. They were not grief. They were strategy leaking from her eyes. "I was scared," she said. "Your father was under so much pressure and Lucas needed help. And you always seemed so strong." That sentence almost made me laugh. Not because it was harmless, but because it was the most honest thing she had ever said. They did not protect me because I was strong. They exploited me because I survived it. Lucas slapped the table. "Don't act innocent. You lived here. You benefited too." I turned to him. "From what? The unpaid mortgage? The forged documents? The insults with dinner?" His face twisted. "You always thought you were better than me." "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending you were helpless." That hit him harder than I expected. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again with nothing useful inside. My father snatched the demand letter and read aloud with shaking fury. "30 days? You're giving us 30 days to vacate if we can't meet the legal terms?" My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. "Vacate? Natalie, this is our home." "It was supposed to be a home," I said. "You made it a weapon." My father slammed the paper down. "I will fight this. I will sue you. I will tell everyone what kind of daughter you are." "Please do," I said. Ellen already prepared a full timeline: bank records, transfers, default notices, the forged consent form. Screenshots of luxury spending while you were telling me the mortgage was current. If you want this public, I can make it very easy. Silence dropped like a curtain. My father's eyes flicked to my mother. My mother looked at Lucas. Lucas looked away. There it was, the triangle of blame searching for the weakest corner. For years, that corner had been me. Not anymore. My mother whispered, Lucas, what did you do with the money your father gave you? Lucas exploded. Don't put this on me. You both said Natalie would handle it eventually. My father's face turned purple. You said the investment would come back before the bank noticed. My mother cried harder. I told you not to use Natalie's name. My skin went cold. I had suspected all three knew. Hearing them unravel in real time was different. They were not confused victims of circumstance. They had planned around me like I was a spare wallet with a heartbeat. I stood slowly. Thank you, I said. My father snapped his head toward me. For what? For finally saying it out loud. He realized too late. My phone was on the table recording. Not hidden illegally. Not in a private room where I had no right to be. But in the house where I lived. During a conversation about documents bearing my own name. Ellen had told me the rules in our state, and I had followed them. Lucas lunged toward the phone. I picked it up before he reached it. Touch me, I said. And tonight gets worse. He froze, breathing hard, fists shaking. My father looked smaller suddenly. Not weak exactly, but exposed. My mother stopped crying for half a second. That was when I understood. They were not horrified by what they had done. They were horrified that I could prove it. The next hour did not feel real. It felt like watching a house burn without flames. My father paced the dining room, muttering about lawyers, reputation, betrayal, and how children were supposed to honor their parents. My mother kept switching voices. First soft, then angry, then helpless, then accusing. Lucas drank straight from a glass of water like a man trying to swallow panic. I stayed seated. That was important to me. I did not want to scream. Screaming would have made them feel equal to me. I wanted the facts to do what my pain never could. Here is what happens next, I said. You have 30 days to negotiate repayment through counsel, sell voluntarily, or leave before formal proceedings continue. If you cooperate, I will not push for criminal charges beyond what is required to clear my name. If you harass me, threaten me, damage property, or contact my clients, every document goes where it needs to go. My father laughed, but it cracked halfway through. You think you're powerful now because you learned paperwork? No, I said. I learned paperwork because powerful people like you count on everyone else being too tired to read it. My mother wiped her face. Where are we supposed to go? That question landed in the room with a cruel irony. How many times had they threatened to throw me out? How many times had they told me I owned nothing, deserved nothing, controlled nothing? Now they wanted compassion from the person they had trained to live without it. You have options, I said. You have retirement accounts you told me were untouchable. Lucas has the truck you bought him. Mom has jewelry from Grandma you claimed was missing. Dad has the boat he swore was sold years ago. You can make choices. You just can't make them with my name anymore. My mother's eyes widened. How do you know about the jewelry? I smiled sadly. Because I stopped being the daughter you could distract with guilt. Lucas pointed at me. This is revenge. Don't pretend it's justice. I looked at him for a long moment. He still wanted to reduce everything to a dramatic word, so he would not have to face the boring ugliness of receipts. Maybe it started as revenge, I admitted. Maybe the first night I saw my forged signature, I wanted all of you to feel as small as you made me feel. But then I kept finding documents. I kept finding lies. And somewhere along the way, revenge became protection. My father scoffed. Protection from your own family? Especially from my own family. He flinched. I had never seen that before. My mother reached across the table, her fingers trembling near mine but not touching. Natalie, please. I know we made mistakes. But you don't understand what it's like to be parents, to worry, to make hard decisions. I understand hard decisions, I said. I made one when I decided not to spend the rest of my life buying peace from people who only sell more war. Her hand dropped. Lucas muttered, "You'll regret this when nobody comes to your wedding, or your hospital room, or your funeral." The old me would have shattered at that. The old me believed loneliness was worse than disrespect. But I had learned something during those 6 months of quiet preparation. Being alone with dignity feels very different from being surrounded by people who need you broken. "Maybe," I said, "but at least nobody will be standing over me demanding a payment." My father sat down heavily. For the first time, he sounded tired instead of furious. "What do you want from us?" I almost said apology. That small, hungry word rose in me like a child. But I knew better. An apology given at gunpoint by consequences is just another performance. "I want you to stop," I said. "Stop using me. Stop rewriting what happened. Stop telling people I abandoned you when you spent years pushing me toward the door. Stop calling abuse discipline, debt family duty, and silence respect." My mother whispered, "We didn't think you'd actually leave." That sentence was the closest thing to truth she had offered all night. "I know," I said. "That was your biggest mistake." Then I stood, picked up my bag, and placed a second smaller envelope on the table. Lucas stared at it like it might explode. "What now?" he snapped. "Copies," I said. "The originals are safe." My father closed his eyes. My mother started crying again, quieter this time. Not for me, for the life she had assumed would continue with me carrying the consequences. I walked to the hallway, took my coat from the hook, and paused at the family photo near the front door. In it, Lucas stood in the center with both parents behind him, hands on his shoulders. I was off to the side, half cropped by the frame. I used to hate that picture. That night, I understood it had been honest all along. I did not sleep at home that night. I drove to a small hotel near my office, checked in with shaking hands, and sat on the edge of the bed until the adrenaline wore off and the grief arrived. That is the part revenge stories often skip. People imagine the moment you win feels clean. It doesn't. Freedom can feel like surgery, necessary, painful, and terrifying once the numbness fades. I cried for the mother I wished I had. I cried for the father who had turned authority into a religion. I cried for the brother I used to protect in school when other kids called him weird, before he learned that mocking me earned applause at home. But I did not cry because I doubted myself. The next morning, my phone had 46 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and one message from my father that said, "Call us back now."